The family of promise is a mess, like all of them. They are all a pack of secretive, deceptive, sneaky, faithless malcontents who refuse to accept responsibility for their actions and generally fail to do the right thing despite repeated opportunities. Sir Walter Scott was right when he said, "Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive." See, Isaac is old and blind, but he's actually far from dead. Later on, we'll see that he lives for another several decades after this episode in Genesis 27. In spite of knowing that God had intentionally chosen to bless the younger Jacob, he arranges to bless his favorite son, Esau. Now, generally, this type of blessing ceremony would have taken place in a public family gathering, but here it's designed to include only the father and son. Rebecca, who is eavesdropping on this secret conversation, is no better. Again, she knew what God had said. Yet instead of trusting in God's sovereignty and acting honorably, she devises a rather deceitful scheme that allows her favorite son, Jacob, to trick Isaac into blessing him. Jacob, of course, goes along with this plan, going so far as to even wear his brother's clothes, to put strips of goat skin on his neck and on his arms. He even has the audacity to credit God with helping him find the fake wild game quickly. And then there's Esau. Now, remember, this is the guy who despised his birthright so severely that he sold it for a bowl of soup. Now he wrongly claims to be twice victimized by his twin brother. Nowhere is there even a hint of responsibility, and then he compounds his failures by being so consumed with anger that he pledges to kill his brother once their father dies. So, by the end of the chapter, everyone is miserable and angry at each other. Relationships are just tortured and broken by sin. There is only separation and heartache. So what do we make of this? Well, first, this is a lesson in and of itself. See, any and every departure from God's will and instruction is doomed to end in failure and pain. I mean, just think about Jacob. He leaves and never sees his mother again. All of the characters involved in this chapter are simply reaping what they sowed. Second, it's worth noting that Isaac and his family weren't completely faithless. Rather, their faith was kind of mixed rather awkwardly with sin and rebellion. And consider that Hebrews chapter 11 says that by faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau. Isaac believed in the power of the Abrahamic blessing, as did everyone else. That's partly why all of this was such a big deal. Isaac repeats verbatim part of the blessing that God had given to Abraham. Yet none of them pursue it correctly. And herein lies the sort of dichotomy that I think all of us struggle with. We may not be as evil as we could be, but on the other hand, evil has invaded every part of our being. That's why we're continually struggling to do the right thing with the right motivation at the right time and in the right way. This is a call, as Paul would later write, to intentionally persevere in working out our salvation. That is, pursuing our sanctification. And the way that we do this is just by continually exposing these faithless actions and sins, by confessing them, by receiving Jesus' forgiveness, and then growing in holiness. This holiness, this Christ-likeness is the goal of all believers, and it is the will of God. See, in pursuing that, we are aligning ourselves with God. And then, as we're reminded in this chapter, the sovereign will of God will always come to pass.